Hey, coffee experts. Those of you running independent coffee shops, you're always looking for ways that you can drop your costs. And we here at the Coffee Experts Club really understand that. And so we've started something called Indie Coffee Coalition. And what it's designed to do is to drop your costs on two of the things that you're probably experiencing the highest sales volume in your store. And that is energy drink and frat mix. Those two line items, we've created our own products and are offering you those products at a reduced cost so that you can cut out the Red Bull of America. You can cut out the main lines of energy drinks that you're doing and serve your own energy drink at a reduced cost on a line item that you're probably already making a lot of sales on anyway. The best way that you can grow sales is by dropping your costs and maintaining a current volume. So check us out at indiecoffee.co and we'll love to tell you more there.
Welcome to the Coffee Experts Club, where we discuss all of the insights, expertise, and drama that goes into making your passion your profession. Our hosts, Aaron, Ben, and Drew, are three coffee experts who have taken their coffee experience and turned it into true expertise. They have consulted with major coffee brands throughout the United States and beyond, providing operations expertise and growth strategy for drive-through openings, multiple locations, and everything in between. So brew yourself a cup and hang out a bit with the Coffee Experts Club.
Had a great episode last week. Talking with the guys up in Corvallis again, coffee culture. Paul Tostberg and Andrew, his roaster. I just think such good dudes. I mean, 30 years in the business, right? Like, so whatever you think you know about coffee, just know this. You probably haven't been in it for 30 years. Like when it comes to listening up, I just think guys who are veterans in the industry, I love talking to those guys, especially guys who have like just dominated. You know what I mean? Like he didn't just open one or two stores. He hasn't just like settled down and just been like, hey, we just do this and no more. He's got 5 locations in Corvallis. Corvallis is not that big of a town. You know what I'm saying? But it's just like, that's a guy who said, no, we're setting our roots here. We're establishing hometown hero here. And we're going to just like button this town down. And I think, man, they've done it. And I think we talked a lot about it last week, but it's a college town, Ben, which opens up all of its own set of question marks and pain points and problems, but benefits too. And I thought we could dive into that just a little bit. You know, Drew wasn't here with us last week, but I know he's good friends with Paul. Paul has helped us a lot in Belize, even with getting us part and giving us like insights on our machines. You know, Drew has had to basically get a major in La Marzocco. I mean, like as far as how far he's had to take apart all the machines and put everything back together again. And the beauty with a veteran like Paul is he's that many years out beyond Drew, and Drew can get on the phone and be like, hey, so when you do this, how does it affect this? And, you know, Paul is a dealer of wholesale parts, you know, so he's been able to help us even get some parts in that has been a benefit for us down in Belize. So we owe a lot to Paul and we're really grateful for him. But I just thought we could talk a little bit this week around college towns, benefits, pros, cons, hometown hero, how you lock down a town, and then even maybe jump into some of the nerdiness. Cause I know Andrew took us way into the deep end of the pool on some of the nerdiness that he gets into with brew ratios and all the different things that go into that. So I figured that would be a good thing for us to discuss today. Deep dive.
I think that's a good start.
When I was working with HP Reno, it's kind of a similar thing. You know, Reno has a lot of college age kids, and I've been with them since 2021? 2021. So years now, and I have seen some of the ups and downs. I wasn't here to discuss it with Paul, but one of the huge, I mean, HP Reno is a special case because I think there were 99% girls that work at the stores. So their pool of applicants is unique. I don't know if it's the same way for coffee culture. I don't know if you mentioned that, but they did recently branch out into hiring some guys. So I know some of the things that they dealt with, and I have friends who are at the age right now who are having babies, and it's like, oh, I send my kid to daycare and they get sick, you know, and then they bring us home, and the college age kid the same way. They go out to college and they get sick, and then suddenly all of your kids start to get sick at the same time. And odd little, you know, phenomenon like that.
Or your entire employee base, because they're all the same age, all went out to the same party the night before. And they're all a little too under the weather to show up for work the next day. Yeah, it has its unique advantages and disadvantages for sure. I mean, that's not even to mention just even the traffic pattern. You know, they were talking about like the seasonality of sales is so counter to like what's, you know, what we were used to at roasters, I'm guessing most coffee shops are used to, because like coffee is it's such a routine sale. Like, I mean, everybody knows it. Like your morning crew knows every customer because it's the same customer every day at the same time of day. But like for us, like spring and summer, we're like, those are our moneymaker months. Like that's where the cash comes in, the cash flow comes in, that's where the people come in. Your winter months are your dead months. For a college town, it's almost opposite. Like they lose, what are they saying? Like a third of the city in the summer, pretty much.
Yeah.
Well, and like in the fall and winter, all the students are in. So it's weird to kind of have to flip your sales routines kind of on a head with a college town, which could be, I mean, it could be difficult if it's the first time you've ever been in a town like that, coming from a traditional, not traditional, but like a normal city that isn't a college town. To move into an area like that that would be really hard to try and figure out right out the gate.
And it could be, I mean, a benefit because the kids that are working for you are the same group of kids that are going to leave during summer times.
Mm-hmm.
You have staff seasonally, they're going to come and go exactly what the traffic pattern is.
Yeah, and we did talk about that a bit. I was like, what's it like when your workforce that you hired on, like, are you basically hiring on 6 months at a time? And I think that's where Paul's smart and really talked about sort of the processes they had in place to make that as soon as you lose, Jimmy and Sally, because it's summertime, you can put somebody in their spot really quickly, like as quickly as possible to stay as efficient as possible.
Yeah, I think it's good. We talked a lot about SOPs, standard operating procedures. Obviously, that's something we talk about a lot here at the Collab team, a lot within all the experts, be it coffee experts or ops experts, all the different things that we do is how do you exit somebody? The way that you exit somebody is make sure you understand what they're doing, right? And how do you onboard somebody? How do you experience the least speed bump as possible? And that is be really clear on what that person does so that when they exit, you don't let it fall flat. And I think that because we're not just talking about baristas now, right? We're talking about if you have 5 locations in a town, you're talking about roasting, you're talking about delivery, you're talking about all the different moving pieces that go into all the different levels of what it is you do, and just making sure that you're really clear on all of those roles could come and go at any given point in time, and probably your most graduated, your smartest people are probably going to go. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like they're probably going to move on to a different town. Like they're probably going to go on and start their own careers, So how do you make sure that you look to that next generation and build that next generation of leaders so that your whole company doesn't cripple when you lose a good player,
Yeah, it's always been the catch-22 of the coffee industry, right? Is like you want super motivated, super bright, super energetic, outgoing employees. The sucky thing is like you're only going to have them for so long, because if they are that thing, like they're going to skyrocket through your organization doing amazingly, and they're going to get to a point where they go, okay, I'm ready to do my own thing now, or I'm ready to start my own coffee company, or maybe like they say when kids graduate, like go off and start their actual career. Great employees while they're there for the 4 years that they're there, but they're like, hey, I'm getting a tech degree. I'm going to go on and work in tech. I was just here for 4 years. So that's always been, we talked about that over and over again at Roasters. It's like, we have this great manager. We want to keep them forever, but at the same time, should we keep them forever? Is this what they should be doing? It seems like they've got a better brain for this thing, but they're so great for the company. So you're always going back and forth like, man, this is a great kid, but man, they'd be really great doing something else too. And they want to do something else. Always that catch-22 when you're dealing with, I guess, a 20-year-old workforce.
I do think, like towards the end of Roasters, Ben, I think that you and I really leaned into how can we create an ascension plan that makes sense? There are going to be some of those people that come through that's like, no, we do want to make a career out of this. And how do we incentivize them in such a way? And I know, Drew, in all honesty, you were one of those people, you came in just as a barista. You worked your way up to like an assistant manager, a manager, then up to a regional manager. And then your next ascent was going to be to go out and do a franchise. Had Roasters not sold to BlackRock and had that whole thing not gone that way, that was the plan. The location was built. You were just getting ready to ink your signature to it when the whole thing just like whisked away. And I know that there's some heartburn in that for you back then. I hope not now. I know we're doing some pretty badass stuff down in Belize now. It was, man, their loss, my gain of us becoming partners and being able to do some cool stuff down there. But I do think that if you can give people the longevity of, hey, stick around here and this year ascension path. I know, Ben, you were really, really big on that. How can we create a visual, a diagram for people to see, hey, as you ascend, when you work as, a barista, this is your cap. You're going to grow to this part and no more. And as you move up to an assistant, this will be your cap and you'll be here and no more. And then as you work up to a manager, this is your cap unless you go to a higher volume store. And then this is your cap. And then from there, the ascension from there is regional. And then the ascension from regional is franchisee. And if you can create that career path for people, I think that we can make coffee something awesome, but it has to take initiative. You can't just like string people along or make people feel like, hey, this is the best place to work, but you're still paying them, a dollar or two within what you started them at. Like that's not fair to ask from anybody. Like if you're going to keep somebody around, let's give them a good ascension path as employees. Like how can we help them dream a little bit too? And that's stuff that Drew and I are talking about now with Coffee de los Mayas. We've had some kids that were with us at the original location. We gave them the opportunity and moved them to the new location. These are kids who had never moved before, had always just been grown up in their town that they lived in. And we moved them an hour and a half away and then another hour by a ferry to the island. Totally different locale, totally different vibe, put them in this place and gave them opportunity. And now, the assistant that we brought there, we're talking about location number 3. How can we make her a manager of the next location? And like, as Drew and I continue to dream and to grow and talk about potential of franchising and maybe some of those opportunities, how can we give these kids who stuck it out with us the ability to continue to ascend? I think that's really important.
Yeah. I like even what Paul was mentioning, the simple ascension of like, when you start at Coffee Culture, like you don't touch the machine for the first 6 months. Like just like your first step in the door and immediately you're like, okay, I can already see my next step up in this organization. I'm just going to be working the cashier and sweeping floors for the first 6 months because I have to actually work my way up to be able to get to be a barista for this company. Just that even small piece is right out the gate. It tells you, okay, I have something to work towards, to work for. I can have a goal that I can see that's achievable, especially again with those, if you're hiring the right people and they're highly motivated people, you have to give them something to work towards. Otherwise, it's just, they're just like, all right, see ya. This has been fun for the first, 4 or 5 months, but I mean, I can go just be, a cog in a wheel anywhere else. If you give me something to work for, that's what makes it fun.
And it's a benefit in another way too, because I remember when we finally decided that we needed an HR department at Roasters when we had like 120 Summit employees.
Right.
Behind the curve on that one. But I sent the email to Starbucks and asked them, hey, can I meet with somebody in your organization to talk about this? And they were gracious enough to meet with me. And one of the things that they mentioned was that you can teach anybody how to make coffee. You can teach anybody how to pull shots. You can teach them how to, stir flavors into espresso and add milk. That's easy, but you can't necessarily train everybody to be a good customer service, a front-facing person for the organization, and they said that 90% of the training was customer service and how do you really greet people and keep them entertained, because a lot of what we do is entertainment. They make a great cup of coffee, and that's very important, but another level of it is greeting people, talking to them, really getting to know them, and getting comfortable standing in front of the customer for, anywhere from 2 to 5 minutes, depending on how many drinks they order and how long they're there. And I don't know, we've all probably had experiences where we go to a coffee shop and it gets really weird really fast because doesn't have a stage presence. So I think with 6 months in the window, can really solidify those skills too of, what do the drinks cost? What is the, average thing people are ordering, and how do we establish that we're here to speak to them and not shut the window on there?
I mean, that's some of the part, Drew, and this is just like us pulling the curtain a little bit back on mine and your partnership of where do we fit in the organization. I hate the days that you're working bar, you know what I mean? Because I'm like, you're an owner, like that shouldn't be something that you're always having to do. But I love the days you're working bar in some ways, because I feel like as you work alongside shoulder to shoulder with these kids, they're learning so much from you just by watching you, things that you can't teach them. Yeah, like you put together all those training videos. I feel like we've got a badass training program of like the training videos we put kids through, and then like our pretty systematic way of taking them through their testing before we release them, into the schedule, bring them onto the team or put them into the schedule for, shifts. But I think that all those things I feel like are just the basic mechanics. The things we're talking about now, like that takes time. And I feel like it takes time to watch, and it takes time to learn, and it takes time to grow and see your skills. And all of us have those things in our life. Like I love fly fishing. I could read a ton of books on fly fishing, but it's never going to be worth as much to me as when I step into the river with somebody else who's just really damn good at fly fishing, and I can watch their backstroke, and I can watch how they bring it out on water and lay it out. And I can watch how they mend their line, or the different things where, oh, so that's what they're doing. And I think watching Drew is like watching a master. Like he's just so damn good. And I know he wouldn't say it this way, but Ben, like we've been experiencing some of the biggest days on the island this past week. And I'm like, bro, is it because you're working the bar with the kids or what? And he goes, well, I don't want to say it like that, but I promise you, I think it's because it's handling skills like you just talked about, Drew, and then you passing those skills on to the kids. It's a big deal.
Unfortunately, we're having some staffing issues. That's why I'm doing it, but we all go through, every coffee shop will. We're just, I'm close enough to the origin of that. I'm still working when that happens. So I have been in there with been training a new girl, and she's stellar at customer service. She's already memorizing people's drinks, people's names. She called them out as they're pulling around the side. We hadn't really had newbies doing that, and I won't attribute that to me. She was doing that when I got in there, but there is something to say about the type of care that they're going to get when I'm there. I walk in and they're on their phones, and 2 seconds later they're all cleaning and doing stuff because I walked in, and it's just like, oh no, the boss is here, we better act right. And so when one of us is in there watching them work, it is going to push them to step outside their comfort zone because they know that's what we expect. I don't expect you to stand there quietly staring at the customer. It'd be weird.
I remember those first days of being on bar. So what do I talk about with you?
Hey, experts, we've got something really awesome that we do here at Coffee Experts Club, and that's called the My First Drive-Through Coffee Masterclass. So if you're opening your next coffee shop, I think a lot of times you may think to yourself, I know what goes into opening a coffee shop. I've been doing this for years, but maybe you've been doing it for somebody else. And maybe this is your first option of starting a coffee shop on your own. Or maybe you don't know anything about coffee and you're just like, I'm looking for a good investment opportunity. Starting a coffee shop seems like a good place to put it, and you're going to enter into it. But what you don't know is all the things that you don't know, right? And so what we've done with this masterclass is taken behind the scenes how you find your first location, what you need to be thinking about in finding a location. We give you a gift in the masterclass where it's a step-by-step process of how you're opening your coffee shop, the different checkpoints you need from coming up with your plans and talking with the city and then negotiating a lease. And then how do you build a team and what are the different pieces you need to be thinking about? It's a great masterclass, door to door, start to finish, completely free on opening up your next coffee drive-through. So check it out. It's at myfirstdrivethrough.coffee, and it's a great masterclass. You won't regret it. We'll see you on the inside there. We also talked about a little bit with Paul and Andrew, just the diversity of coffee, right? Like how it's so easy for somebody to work a coffee job and just think, oh, I got this. I should just go open my own coffee shop, not realizing how much goes into it. And we talked about that in the masterclass, My First Drive-Through.coffee. We do a 3-day masterclass where we deep dive and we actually give you 4 days as a bonus. And it's just an hour session each. So I don't think I'm going to talk at you for days, but I think that one of the things that we really deal with in there is just the diversity of specificity of things you need to know in coffee. Just because you've been slinging coffee and just because you know the drinks and just because you know how to open and close out a register like that, that's not all the pieces to coffee. And just because you know how to submit an order, like that doesn't mean you understand the back end of all those orders. And it doesn't mean that you understand on opening up a new location and what are all the things you need to know about your lease agreements and what do you need to know about setting up vendor accounts? What do you need to know about choosing a spot, because there are plenty of people we've seen open. There's a guy that opened just down the street here earlier, just this year, who is already closed because I think he thought if he just opened that it would just work, and man, what a heartbreak, but that much energy. And he built it from the ground, right? You build this thing, you open this thing, and then it doesn't turn enough in the first 6 months, so much so that you're running out of cash and you have to close the thing down. I think it's really important to really do your due diligence and do your homework and understand what goes into it. And it was cool just to talk to, Paul, who's obviously 30 years, 5 locations. He knows a thing or two, to listen to him talk and listen. We've talked a lot about understanding machines. Andrew got super nerdy about roasting and brew ratios and different machines and what's called the refractometer. Like as far as like all the different tools that go into how do you know that your coffee is going to be different? But it was just cool to hear masters of the craft show how much they care about something, that they're not just buying beans, grinding them and putting them out with a cup of coffee. I mean, like they're going into the depths of coffee culture is different. I thought that was really cool to listen to.
Yeah, they got to the center of the proverbial onion that is the coffee industry, because it's just like that. Like you're like, I'll just start a coffee shop. And you like peel back one layer, you're like, oh crap, I got to figure out where I'll source all of my ingredients. You pull back the next layer, you're like, oh no, like employee management. The next layer, you're like, oh, cost of goods. You just keep going down each layer. Like the coffee industry has a lot of layers outside of just put ground coffee in an espresso machine and put the drink out the window. Like you get all the way down to now that you're roasting and supplying your own coffee. Now let's talk about commodities. You're looking at commodities pricing. Like those are some deep layers. And for them to like get down to the point where they're talking about the brew ratios and going back through and testing all of their coffees with new roasts and new brew ratios on new equipment, and knowing, just because they're masters of the trade, that if they have one grinder in one location and they have a different grinder in a different location, their customers are probably going to get slightly different coffees, taking those home for home brewing, obviously. Or even just the fact that if you have a grinder burrs you just changed, today, versus a grinder that hasn't ever been changed ever, like your grind settings are going to be completely off. You only figure that out if you're, layers and layers and deep in the coffee industry. So it was fun that them talk about that because that they're in it, they know what they're doing. And that's why I asked the question. I was like, how do you communicate that to the customer? Because you're really deep in the center of it. How do you be like, hey, just go home and do like 1:18 ratio. You're good. Because it is really easy to stay nerdy and not be able to communicate that to your customer. And when you can pair those two together, the real nerdiness and to be able to communicate that, that's where obviously you get a successful company like they do.
And I mean, as an employee, and it seems like most coffee shops, not all of them, people who come into coffee have worked in coffee before. Most of the employees are protected from all of the knowledge, all of the horrors of business. We don't let them see everything because, as Aaron did one thing and Ben did one thing and I did one thing and Roasted, but we all did our own thing, because we didn't need to do anything else. We had a function, we had a role, we were a cog in the machine. And while we might have known about it, it doesn't make us masters. And so from as an employee or just, a part of the machine, and I'm going to go, business. It's like everything that I know, there's probably 10 things I don't know. And even the things that I do know, I need to learn more about because I'm not going to be able to do all of it and do all the things I don't know unless I, memorize it and teach it, which goes back to probably all the way back to SOPs. But knowing something well enough to teach it, still going to be another 3 or 4 aspects of the business that you're going to be a newbie at.
Very true.
Which is the exciting part, right? Okay, so let's unplug all that. So we just scared the shit out of everybody. Like as far as like everybody's super nervous about starting a coffee shop now, but like let's pull all that back now and say that's also the exciting thing. Like Drew and I were rallying back and forth on WhatsApp this morning. Talking about he just traveled from the island to the inland. And he deal with the story there now and working with the team there. And he just was talking about how exciting it is, like the things that we've been on the ride. And he goes, and it's going to get a lot crazier moving forward. Because we're dreaming about bigger things, but like there is an excitement in it. For sure, it's scary as hell. Anybody that tells you any differently is lying to you. Nobody knows exactly what they're getting into, no matter how long they've been doing this. Like every new step is still a step of faith. Like it's still a step out onto like, man, I hope this thing works. I hope we don't eat crap. Like I hope this thing like pans out. But I do think that there's an excitement in that too. I can't state enough the importance of finding people that you can partner well with. Like I told Drew this morning, I wouldn't want to be in this with anybody else. I feel like Drew and I balance each other out so well. Like my strengths are his weaknesses are my strengths. And I feel like we get to balance each other out and run things by each other. And I think if you have that mutual respect, or if you can find somebody to partner up with to do something cool, like doing business can be so fun. Super scary, like not always guaranteed. You might lose your shirt on some stuff, but I think if you're in the rungs with somebody that is willing to run hard alongside of you, I think doing business can be super fun, which is why we do things like the masterclass. I had somebody reach out to me just this week and say, hey, me and my husband are consuming the masterclass together for date night. It's amazing. Thank you so much for putting out the content. And I just think that made me happy. Like, and thank God, like, let me give you something for free that we worked hard to build. And I hope it serves you well. So I just think, don't be scared off as we talk about these things. And you're like, shoot, now, like, I just think I might hunker down and just enjoy my day job. Like, yes, it's risky. Yes, it's scary and so rewarding, but do it right. Do your homework. Like, don't just assume, don't just throw yourself into the deep end without any good support. And I think that's something that we really love offering as coffee experts is, hey, we want to be there for you. Don't do this thing alone. Like tune into the podcast for free. Check out the masterclass for free. If you want something more than that, we engage and help people through their projects as they work through starting their own coffee. But man, just don't go it alone, but also realize it can be a lot of fun if you do it alongside of people that you trust and And I think that the 3 of us on this call, Ben, you and I have got to work together for the last decade, and I love working with you, dude. I think it's so good. I think you and I had so much fun running roasters together, and then we have so much fun running the projects we do for different businesses now because it's just fun doing business when you do business with people who know stuff. You get to work next to each other and respect. And I can tell, like for Paul and Andrew, you can just see that in both of them, right? Like Paul just has a deep respect for Andrew. Andrew has a deep respect for Paul. I think if you can link up with people like that, it just makes business so much more enjoyable.
Yep. Yeah, I would say, it's scary, but embrace the evolution. Nobody has ever opened a coffee shop with 5 locations and a roastery all in 1 year. It doesn't work like that. There's an evolution to getting through all these layers of coffee, and hopefully along the way, that's why as you're evolving, your business is getting better and better. And you can, like you said, you can go through that evolutionary process on your own. It's painful and it takes a long time, or you can partner with people and try and help push you along and push you through that process quicker and tell you when to jump when there's a hurdle coming that you probably don't see coming because you've never been down that path before.
Well, and as scary as starting a business is, I mean, anybody who has an entrepreneurial edge, it's a lot scarier to work for someone else.
Very fair.
I remember talking about this with one of my grandpas before I left Roasters. I was like, I want to go do something. I want to go do my own thing, but I'm a little nervous about it. What if this happens? What happens? What if that happens? You just go back to work, and so you dream up another dream. You go try that out. He's like, does that sound so bad? I was like, it's not so bad. It's not that bad. As long as you go try. Like trying, there's no finish line. There's no finish line to this game that we play in entrepreneurial, spirits, and just keep trying.
Love it. Well, boys, I think we're about at time. Man, thank you for our listeners listening in today for Coffee Experts Club. If you didn't catch the episode last week with Paul and Andrew from guys at Coffee Culture, please do. Veterans in the industry, 30 years, 5 locations, buttoning down a town with their own roastery. Super, super commendable guys. As are you two gentlemen. Always love doing our podcast together, talking all things coffee. And you guys have a beautiful day, and we'll see you here on Coffee Experts next week.
Thanks so much for joining us today. For those of you who are looking to become a coffee expert yourself, we offer an incredible, thorough training online for opening your first coffee drive-thru at www.myfirstdrivethru.coffee.